Human Gambits series. Book 1, Chapter 17. First Contact. Max can't believe how real this dreamscape is. It's so detailed. He's actually starting to worry that this isn't a dream, but something much different. As he looks around the cabin, he notices a display light up. Max looks towards the display, which seems to go through a series of test patterns. Then the word, "Hi," appears. Okay, that's weird, he thinks. Is that Sophia? What am I supposed to do with that? Max tries to speak but still has no voice. He tries again to say hi to no avail. Max looks closer at the display, and when he tries to look even closer, he seems to zoom in on it. That's new, Max thinks. Max is now right up on the display, like he is sitting with it right in front of his face. This lends even more credence to his dream hypothesis. Being this close, Max notices that the display has changed significantly. It is covered in the same black spiderwebs that are now everywhere inside the ship. He thinks back to the first time he saw this display after waking up. He has a crystal clear memory of the display. Wow, what a vivid and sharp memory. Max has never felt so clear-headed before. He distinctly remembers this display having no webbing earlier. Now it's covered, with one larger strand connecting it to the alien ship. Maybe that isn't Sophia. Sentinel notices the optical sensor turn toward the display and then follows the nanite connections back to its ship before moving back to the display. Does it understand that I've taken command of the display? Sentinel questions. How can I get feedback from the alien? It seems that all it can control is the optical sensor. Sentinel furiously scans through thousands of interactions between the aliens in their native habitat. It notices that they move the large round appendage on top of their bodies a lot. Do these movements have meaning? If so, can I possibly use something like this to get feedback? Sentinel sifts through more and more of the alien broadcasts. Sentinel finds that the large appendage is called a head and houses most of the alien's sensors. As such, it is used for communications. Ah, finally. Sentinel latches onto something it can use. Most of the aliens use the head appendage to either confirm or reject information. For most that use English as the communications protocol, a bobble forward and backward is an affirmative, and a twist, side to side, is for negative. Both movements can be approximated with the optical sensor being used by the alien. Now, to format a communication protocol. Sentinel spends what feels like an eternity, but is just minutes in human time, fully learning the English language and interactions of the aliens called English speakers. It thinks it finally has a grasp on their basic communications protocols. Sentinel displays the word "understand" on the display and receives no reply. Max sees the display change. It now displays a question. Understand? Understand what? He thinks. Is it asking if I can understand the words? Max tries to reply but still has no voice. He tries to nod his head yes, but nothing happens. How infuriating. The display goes blank. Has he lost his chance to let someone know that he's still alive? Then the words, "Understand text," appear on the display. They obviously don't know that he's paralyzed and can't respond. The only thing Max seems to have control of is one eye. He decides to try using that since it's his only option. He tries blinking, but there's no change in the display. He closes his eye for even longer and then opens it. There's still no change. Max finally decides to look up and then down. This time there is a reaction, and the display changes. Sentinel is intrigued. After several attempts at communication, the optical sensor seems to have had a reaction. A positive reaction for affirmative or yes. During the long periods that it takes these aliens to interact, Sentinel has learned even more from their broadcasts. Sentinel is becoming more proficient with their English language protocol. It now knows that for most English speakers, the words nod and shake in reference to the head appendage mean yes and no. Nodding is yes, shaking is no. Sentinel decides to try to confirm these deductions. It displays nod yes on the display. The optical sensor moves up and down. Sentinel takes this as an affirmative and that this was a correct deduction. It then displays shake no on the display, and the optical sensor moves from side to side. Sentinel displays its first full sentence. Do you understand this text? There's a reply in the affirmative. I've just made first contact with a representative of an organic alien species. But now what? Sentinel decides this one-way binary communication will not be sufficient, but what can it do about it? Sentinel understands what's going on. The nanites did not have access to the alien communications broadcasts and do not understand that the alien relies on manual pathways for communications. Thus, they created no connections to any of the alien's normal avenues for communication, such as speech. Sentinel studies the interface the nanites created to connect the optical sensor and its actuators to the alien's optical nerves, and this gives it an idea. Sentinel has seen the aliens use the touchscreen input-output devices in the broadcasts literally thousands of times now. They almost always use the same appendage, called the right hand, to do this. Sentinel has the nanites trace the communication bundles called nerves in the living alien's right hand all the way into the processing center called the brain. It now understands that many of these nerves are used to activate muscles, which move in a coordinated fashion to cause movement, and that this movement is translated into communications according to which areas of the display are touched. What complicated and ingenious methods these creatures use to get around their deficits, thinks Sentinel. Sentinel then directs the nanites to begin connecting the separate nerve bundles that are assumed to have been linked to the alien's right hand to the input sections of the alien's primary touch display. The display has been damaged, but Sentinel reverse engineers it and extrapolates its function, like it did with the previous display, and makes changes so it can be used for its new intended purpose: the input and visual output from the alien that its right-hand nervous system will control. Max sees the words nod and then shake. He follows suit by moving his eye up and down and then left and right. Then, he notices something in his peripheral vision, something he had never really paid attention to before. There is movement beside his body. What is that beside my head? Max zooms in on it. Is that what I think it is? He stares at what appears to be a small replica of a human brain, about the size of a tennis ball. Max notices more of the black filaments moving from it toward the control display of his ship. Then he notices that the main display is being infiltrated by more of the filaments too. Next, a single strand begins moving out from the display towards the strand moving from the tiny brain. They touch. Suddenly, Max's right hand is on fire. He is in absolute agony. It feels as if he's put his right hand in a flame or a blender. Max desperately tries to pull away, but nothing happens. He still can't move. The pain begins to subside somewhat and Max can think again. Okay, ouch, what just happened? Why did the connection of those strands cause me pain? Max notices the main display is now going crazy. Random areas of the display are being activated and deactivated. As soon as he notices it, it stops. Then he feels the pain in his hand again and tries to move his fingers. Again, the display becomes active. Max is suddenly hit with both a realization and fear. What if this isn't a dream? What if he is paralyzed and the aliens are trying to create an interface for him to use for communication? If that's what they are doing, then what he thinks is his eye is not his eye. Before he can truly freak out, Max finally remembers the suite of optical cameras that were mounted inside the ship. He goes through a mental list of each one, and sure enough, his viewpoint is precisely from the same vantage point as one of the cameras. That's it. I am paralyzed, and the aliens are trying to communicate with me. They've somehow connected one of my eyes to the optical camera, and are now trying to connect my right hand to the touch display in his cabin. The tiny brain-looking device beside my helmet must be connected to my brain somehow. Max tries using his hand again, moving just one finger. Okay, that's better. At least the display isn't jumping all over the place anymore. Max tries touching only one spot on the display, and after a quick burst of failures, he finally succeeds. That was too easy, thinks Max. Their interface technology must be intuiting what I am trying to do and helping me out somehow. Although Max gets enough control to only touch one area of the display at a time, those areas seem random. He continues trying over and over until he memorizes which movements seem to activate which areas. Before he knows it, he has the entire display mapped out. Max then taps the menu icon, pulls up an on-screen keyboard and types, "Hi,